Hey everyone, it's Zaino. I hope you're having an amazing day, just as awesome as you are, and I hope everything is going well. Today is April 8th, 2022, and it is currently 1 a.m. I'm pulling an all nighter tonight, and what better way to spend the night than to record episode 4? So, today's episode is going to be a little different. And here's how we're starting it, okay? You know how your relationship with your parents can be very complicated sometimes? Because it's a very interesting relationship actually because your parents are people that you need to tell everything to, right? Because they are pretty much responsible of you, but you still need to have your own privacy. And that's like a fine line between where you tell them and where you stop, and it can cause problems sometimes. There are people who help you a lot, right, with your life, but you also need to be a little independent, and so on. There are a little bit of contradictions, I feel like, especially when you're at the helm of being an adult, but you're still not an adult yet, aka when you're a teenager, especially. That phase can be awkward and it can be harder to communicate in that phase for both sides, right? Because we do hear parents complaining about how they feel like their children who are teenagers are now acting different, they're being distant, they're not being as honest, they are hiding stuff, and we also hear teenagers complain that their parents don't understand what they want and what they need from them. And when I thought about that, I realized that what would sort that out would be better communication. I realized that lack of communication is the reason behind that problem. And the reason behind that lack of communication is probably just because they're scared to tell you. You are the parent, you are responsible of their lives pretty much so far, and they are scared to tell you a lot of things more than you think they are, and they're scared that you're gonna dismiss their thoughts and so on. And therefore, I decided to go to a high school and ask many and many teenagers this one question, which is, if you could tell your parents one thing right now that you've been wanting to tell them, what would it be? And the answers were very interesting. So, if you're a parent, especially a parent of a teenager, you need to keep listening because this is the message that they want to send you. Now, in order for these answers to make sense to us, and in order for us to be able to overlook this whole situation, I have divided the answers into three categories. The first category has answers that most of the students have said. The second category had answers that less of them have answered, but a lot too. And then the third category has answers that some of the students I asked have answered with that were a little special and were not repeated. Now, starting with our first category and with our number one most said answer is understanding. So many of the students that I asked this question answered with this answer that they wanted their parents to understand them better, to have better understanding. But if we were to handle this logically, right? What causes communication problems with your parents is when you talk to them and they don't understand. It's common sense. When your child, who's a teenager especially, comes to you with a problem or with a story or with an opinion, with anything that they put together and just came to you with, and you dismiss and you discredit and you pay zero attention and you don't understand what he or she is trying to tell you, that's when you fail. That's when they're not going to ever talk to you or confront you with stuff that means things to them, because you made them feel like whatever they were trying to tell you was not a big deal, was not important enough. You made them feel like they were being dramatic. You made them feel like they should never ever come to you again with a problem, that they should either deal with it or ask somebody else for help. And that is never a good thing. When your child, who's a teenager, decides to not be honest with you anymore and to seek help from someone else, that's a problem, because you, as the parent, you are going to want the best things for your children, but anyone else is probably not gonna want good for them. That's the truth. When you have failed to do your duty as the parent and you let someone else take that place for you, that's when you don't know what's going on anymore with your kid. That's when your kid is distant from you. That's when the problem begins. Now, that is our problem, right? But what we could do about it is this. First of all, I suggest that you try to remember yourself in that phase or in that position as a parent. I want you to try to remember when you were a teenager yourself, the things you wanted, the things you wished you had, the connections you wished you had with your parents that you might have not had yourself. Try to think the way they could be thinking. Try to put yourself in their shoes. It's not going to be easy because with age, the way we think is very different. But try to remember how you were when you went through that phase. That's number one. Number two is, please don't ever do this again. When your child comes to you with a problem, don't make it feel worse. Don't lecture your kids when they come to you. They know they've messed up. If they didn't know they were in a deep problem, they wouldn't have come to you. That's the point. They already know how bad it is. They don't need you telling them how much they have messed it up, because they know that. They want the solution. They don't want you to make it worse. Now, the third thing that I want to tell you about isn't something that I want you to do, but it is something that I want you to keep in mind, is most of the times, or a lot of the times, your child does not want advice. They could just want comfort from you as their parent. You could resemble safety for them. They could be telling you something not because they want to know what you think. They already know what you're going to say. They already know they messed up. They just want you to be their friend right now. They need you to be their friend right now. They need you to be their comfort, their safety again. That's answer number one, is teenagers wanted their parents to understand them better. Now, number two on our list, and the second most answered answer on this list, is this. Teenagers asked for more independency. Now, here's the thing. If I were to picture myself as a parent, I understand that you care a lot. I understand that a parent really cares about his or her child, that they mean the world to you, that you want all the best in the world for them, that you're worried about them. But you need to understand that your child needs place to grow. They need space to improve. And if that's hard for you to accept, then you need to remember this. You're not going to be by their side forever. That's how it is. You are going to leave them at some point. Now, when they're on their own, I want you to ask yourself this. Do you feel like they are prepared? Are they prepared to be on their own right now? Can they survive without you? If the answer is no, or if you hesitated, then you're probably not giving them enough space to grow and enough space to improve, to test their capabilities. They need that now. That's gonna also help them decide what they want to do with their lives, because they are gonna have to make very big decisions that affect how their life is gonna go long term. And they need to have enough experience to be able to make those decisions and to be able to make them on their own without you making that for them. Now, that was number two. Now, the third most answered answer on this list is this: teenagers wish they could tell their parents that they're not so young anymore. Now, this is pretty much the same as the last one. What you need to do is you need to give them space. When they have an opinion, you do not dismiss it. When they have an opinion, you listen to it. When they're trying to tell you something, you listen. That was number two. Now, the third most answered answer on our list is this: teenagers wish they could tell their parents to fight less and to stop making big deals out of things. Now, this is very understandable because when you're a teenager, you already have enough stress going on. You already have enough going on. You are trying to look into the future, but you have nothing figured out. You're always asked to do more, and you always feel like you're not doing enough. There's a lot of stress and anxiety and tension that already comes with that phase and with living that phase. The last thing your kid wants is more stress and more tension and more anxiety and pressure. Now, I understand that there might not be much to do about this, and I understand that maybe you are not making a big deal out of things. To them, it feels like that, but to you, being mature enough and more mature than them, you know that it is important. Yeah, I do understand that, and we're not gonna get to that now, but what I'm trying to say is try to have the general atmosphere of the house not feel like you're always right behind the breakpoint. Moving on to our second category of answers to this question. These answers were not necessarily as popular as the first ones. Starting off with number one: teenagers wish they could tell their parents that they are not always right. I actually really like this answer. So, as we all know, all humans make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We all have our flaws. But the very interesting part of this is when you're a kid, you don't ever imagine that your parents are wrong. Tell me I'm not right. When did you ever picture that your parents were doing something wrong as a kid? Never. But when you grow up a little bit and you start to see the world as it is, and you realize that adults are not always right. Nobody's always right, not even your parents. That's the good part when a teenager realizes that the world that that's not how it works, like this is not how the world works. But the not so good part is when the parents act like it's a bad thing. It's not a shame for you to make mistakes. Yes, you're an example for them. But now, right now, when you don't accept the fact that you're wrong, you are teaching them that they have to be always right, even if when it's logically clear to everyone that they're wrong. That's not okay. It is not a shame to make mistakes, and no, you're not teaching them to make that mistake. Accepting your mistakes and letting that show to your kid that, hey, I messed up and I fixed it. That's what they need to learn. That is what they need to learn. The second most answered answer, I have to find a better sentence for this, on this category is this: teenagers want their parents to stop comparing their generation to ours. Now this is very interesting too. So we, as our generation, have had different circumstances to our parents' generation. The world is developing so quickly, and changes are happening so fast, faster than we can comprehend. So, in order for you to compare two generations, you're gonna at least need to have an understanding of both of them, which is very hard. You can't compare two generations that have had different circumstances. Besides, the generation you're talking about all the time that is not as good as your generation, that generation you don't like so much, is the product of your generation. You think kids do that too much and do this too much? You fix it. You are producing that generation, is what you need to realize. And stop asking your kid to idolize you and idolize what you did and what your generation used to do and how they used to do it. Things are different. In order for you to develop a better relationship with your kid, you can't ask them to live the way you lived. And you can't live the way they're living. That's fair too. You just gotta have to find a way for you to understand them. You're gonna have to meet in the space between. That's the only way it could work. Number 3 is this: teenagers wish they could tell their parents that they are doing their best. Now, when students answered this question, it honestly made my heart break a little, because it is very competitive. It is very competitive. And when your parents don't really appreciate the work you do and don't really realize how much effort you're putting in to satisfy them, parents, your kids really want you to be proud of them. Please, please start showing more appreciation of their hard work. It is what they need to do, more hard work, trust me. Because if you don't start showing them your appreciation, they're gonna get sick of it. They're not gonna always try to impress you if you're not gonna be impressed. Right? At some point, they're gonna be sick of it. So please, please start showing more appreciation towards the efforts they're putting. Number 4 on our list is this: teenagers wish they could tell their parents to listen more and to care more and to pay more attention. I added answers that were under this category altogether. So here's this: getting caught up in life is very easy, and it is very busy out there. It's very hard to keep up with everything. But despite that, you still need to realize that paying the bills is not good enough for you to keep up with a family, right? Because they need so much more from you than just financial needs. So as a parent, your children are going to be very grateful of how hard you work and how much effort you put into giving them a better life, better circumstances, but it is not going to be enough. They're still going to want to be able to talk to you. They're still going to want to be able to be close to you. So yes, all the giving you do for them and all the things that you do for them are very important, but you gotta keep in mind that they need to feel like they are your children. And next, moving on, teenagers wish they could tell their parents to treat them and their siblings the same. Now, this answer came in 2 different ways. Some students wish that their parents treated them and their siblings equally, either because some were boys and some were girls, or either because some were older and some were younger. I don't know if that made any sense, but what I'm trying to say is often the younger kid or maybe the older kid has special treatment, or maybe the male, the boy, is given more options or more opportunities than the girl and better circumstances, if you will. So this is very important because when your own child is feeling like they're not being treated fairly in their own house, that's not a good thing, because that atmosphere that you create isn't only toxic between you and that kid, but it's also toxic between the siblings themselves. Now, I do realize that it's not going to always be easy to treat them the same. You're not going to always be able to treat them the same for several reasons, especially when we're talking about younger and older siblings, because there are going to be differences in the way they comprehend stuff and what they do understand. So it is going to be difficult for you to treat them the same. But to a certain extent, it's okay because it's just how it is, it's normal. But when it's excessive and when it's very unnecessary, that's when it gets toxic. Right? Because that's when the kids feel the injustice of it all. Therefore, we really need to treat them the same as much as we possibly can. You also need to realize that every little detail you do does make a difference. Something as small to you as maybe dividing the chores between not genders, but days of the week. What I mean by that is Monday, he cleans the dishes and she does something else, and then another day it's the opposite. What I don't know if that made sense, but what I'm trying to say is don't specify chores for a certain gender because he can do this and she can do that, because her duty is to be in the kitchen and his duty is to be outside. Try doing the opposite. Something as small as that can teach them that when we are adults, we can take up responsibilities. We can help each other because we're not genders teamed up against each other. We are humans living in harmony. I don't know if you found that a bit off topic, but what I'm trying to say here is the small details that you add as you're raising your kid remain in them. And that's how they deal with the world later as they grow up. So when you teach them that there are no major differences between genders, at least not differences that the society should be taking them as it is taking them. That we need to be living in harmony, not teaming up against each other. That she can help him and he can help her. It's not always divided. That small detail that you add can make the future a lot better for both genders. That's an example of how much your details and the things that you add make a difference in the lives of your children and in society. Moving on our list, and the sixth and last answer of our second category, teenagers wish they could tell their parents to accept them. Now that actually it really hurt, and it was heartbreaking to see a handful of people asking for their own parents to accept them. It was very sad because I didn't really think of that ever before, but hey, some things we just can't change. And it is sad to realize that teenagers are working really hard because they do want your acceptance. Parents, your kids want your approval. They need your approval, your acceptance, your appreciation, your love. You need to give that to them. They wish they could tell you to accept them. you need to realize that some things are related to their capabilities, to what they want to do. Accept the things that they can't change or that they don't want to change. I think that was it for the second category. Now, moving on to our third category, the very rare answers, if you will. First of all, can we point out that out of all of the people I asked, one person heard the question, if you could tell your parents one thing right now that you've been wanting to tell them, what would it be? One person answered with, thank you. Which, it doesn't mean that the other students are not grateful for their parents. It just means that when you hear this question, they all had things in mind. But what she had in mind was thank you. I thought it was very sweet. It was very sweet of her. Now, for some reason, 3 of them decided to say nothing. I was like, what do you mean nothing? They were like, there is nothing that I wish I could tell my parents because I do tell my parents everything. And I thought that was great too, because if you actually have great communication with your parents, then that is a great thing. And, well, yay, good for you, I guess. And finally, the final answer of our final category, one student said, I wish we could forgive each other. So apparently something happened that they would not let go of, and they always hold her mistakes against her. So I understand that this is not that common of an answer, but I do understand that it's also common for someone to hold up your mistakes against you. And if you are the parent who's always reminding your kid of how bad they've messed up, then that's terrible. That's just terrible, honestly. Because as teenagers, they are trying to grow and they are trying to develop. They are trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives, with the level of maturity that they have. Therefore, naturally, they are going to make mistakes. So don't hold it up against them. Don't put too much pressure on them. If they come to you seeking help, be helpful, even if just by comforting them. And just allow them to make mistakes. Give them space to grow. And this way, we have covered all of the answers of all the teenagers that I asked. And now I have something that I want to say to the teenagers, especially the ones that I did interview and ask these questions. Guys, you need to realize something too, that your parents are normal people. They are not perfect. They're not close to perfection. They could be further to perfection than you are. Okay? So, when they don't do things right, they probably are confused just as you are. They don't have it all figured out. They don't know how to communicate with you. It's not just you. It's on both sides. You need to keep that in mind too. And don't give them such a hard time, because they are probably trying their best. Because nobody's going to love you as much as your parents are going to love you. That was all, I guess. I hope you guys have found this episode helpful in any sort of way, or at least a relief. Just keep in mind that things are going to get better soon. You're not going to be in this phase forever. You are going to be independent, and you are going to miss these days at some point. Thank you for listening. Hope to see you again. Hope to see you soon. Yours doubtfully, Zaina.